All right, everyone. My name is Ciarra Arnold. I am a gold consultant, and today I'm going to be going over how I personally interact with my clients from start to finish. So, obviously, you can kind of tweak this to make it your own and all that good stuff, but this is pretty much like the basics, in my opinion, and this is what has worked really well for me. So, I have a PowerPoint, so let me share my screen and get all this to go away. All right. Oh, God. Well, we'll go back to the beginning. So, like I said, interacting with clients from start to finish. So, from as soon as you get an inquiry to the very last part of them going on the trip and all of that good stuff. So, first, obviously, you're going to receive their inquiry form. Hopefully, if you haven't already, you will go make a Google form or a Jot form or something like that. I know there is a video on the Infinity site on what you should include in that. So, things that I have included in mine is obviously their name, their phone number, their email address, their preferred method of contact, just so I know how to get in contact with them. And then I also have things on there like when are their travel dates, how many people are going, how many children, and what are those children's ages at the time of travel, what airport they want to go out of, any preferred airlines, where they are wanting to go or where they think they want to go. I also have on their budget, because that is super, super important. And then I also have things in there like if it's for a special occasion, like a honeymoon, or a birthday or something like that. And then I also have a spot for them to put in any extra details that they think I should know or any questions that they have up front. I know recently a lot of people have had questions about like cruise vaccinations. They don't really know what the rules are for that. So I have a spot in there for any questions that they have. And then I also have a spot for how they found me, because I like to know that, to know which one of my marketing techniques is working the best and getting me the most clients. Currently for me right now, it's TikTok, but for everybody else, it may be a little different, just for me to know where I need to spend more time, where I'm getting more clients and things like that. So once I get their inquiry form, I reach out within 48 business hours to schedule a time to speak with them. So if they say that their preferred method of contact is email, then that's how I contact them. If it's text message, that's how I contact them, so on and so forth. And basically, I just reach out to them and say, hey, this is Ciarra with Hidden Gems Travel, and I received your inquiry form. I wanted to see when you would have time to speak with me on the phone for a little bit more detail about your trip and what I can do for you. Just because I like to get on the phone with the client, I strongly recommend that everybody else does that too, just so you can start building that relationship with them. And you can only get so much information from your inquiry form. So that is why I like to get on the phone with them, get some more details, because you would be surprised how many people I get on the phone and they add in all these extra things that they want. Like they want a swim out room and they want to be in this part of Cancun and they don't want to be near certain things, but they didn't put any of that on their form. So it gives me a little more insight as to what they are actually looking for, so I can kind of narrow it down once I start researching. So when I get on the phone with them, these are things that I find out that I do not have on my form, just because I want to make my form as short as possible so that it doesn't take them, 10 years to fill it out when I'm going to get on the phone with them and ask them the same questions again anyway. So this goes for pretty much all vacations, whether a domestic vacation, a cruise, somewhere out of the country like Mexico, Caribbean, Hawaii, something like that. Hawaii's not out of the country, but you know what I mean, over where they're going to have to fly to get there. So I always start out by asking people if they have done their own research, and if so, what are some resorts that they like or hotels that they like or something like that, and why do they like those places? Because if they've kind of already done their own research and they're maybe just calling you to get some prices, you can kind of go on and look and see. And I also ask people, what price did you find it for and where did you find it for that price, so I can kind of know what I'm comparing it to. I just like to take it that step further so that I'm not over here providing quotes that are, way more expensive than what they wanted, especially if they've already taken the time to do all of that work for me. Why would I not use what they've already found? And then, like I said, I ask them, why they like those places. So if those places maybe aren't within budget, or I've heard bad things about that place and they didn't really do any research on reviews, I can find places that are similar to the things that they already like, or find places that have the things they like. Like I just had a client who found a resort, they really liked it because it had swim out suites, but the one that they found, they didn't like the reviews on it. So that was one thing she was like, we don't care, we just want a swim out suite. So that is kind of like what I like to start with. And then I kind of move into if they have a preferred airline and a frequent flyer number so that they can earn their miles and stuff like that. There are some people who are like die hard fans of certain airlines. And personally, I don't ever sell Spirit or Frontier to anybody unless they personally request it. But I do always ask, is there any airline you absolutely do not want to be on? And there are some people that have had, bad experiences or whatever the case may be, and they don't want to go on a certain airline. The next thing I ask in regards to flights is if they have a preferred flight time. So there are some people that really want to leave like as early in the morning as they can. There are some people who want to be able to work a half day, so they don't want to leave until later in the afternoon, or they want to leave like mid-morning because they're not, early risers or things like that. And sometimes people have, if they are going somewhere for a specific occasion, they may have a certain time they need to be there by. So I always like to figure out, preferred flight times and things like that. And then next, I always ask if they prefer nonstop flights, which if I can get my clients a nonstop flight within their budget, then that is absolutely what I'm going to do. But there are some people who prefer to have a layover so that they can save some money. So I always try to get that information as well, just so I know in case the nonstop flights are way too expensive for their budget. And then same thing with budget. I always ask people what their absolute max budget is, and I don't necessarily say it like that. So same people with the swim out suites. I just had my call with them on my form. They put that their budget was $3,800. So when I spoke with them on the phone, I said, I see that you wrote your budget as $3,800. Is that kind of still what you are thinking, or is there any wiggle room with that? And kind of feel it out and see if they are willing to spend a little bit more money, because not only are you probably going to find them a better property and things like that, but you're also going to earn more commissions the more money they spend. So sometimes you'll find that people give you a really low budget just hoping that you can be a magician and pull something out, but they know that you're not going to be able to find it that cheap because they haven't found it that cheap, and they're willing to go up in their budget for certain things. So I always ask, is there any wiggle room? If so, how much? Things like that. So the $3,800 people ended up going up to, I think it was $4,200 is what they decided was like their absolute max budget. So $400 can do a lot, especially when you are looking at all-inclusives and things like that. The next thing I ask is if there are more than like 3 or 4 people, I'll ask, how many people do you want in each room? Because sometimes people say, well, we want all of these people together, and then we want like 2 people by themselves or something like that. And along with that, I ask what type of beds they want. So do they want a king bed if there's 2 of them, or are they just 2 friends and they don't want to sleep in the same bed? They want, 2 queens or 2 double beds or something like that. And if they have children, especially small children, do they want that child to have their own bed, or are they okay with parents and child all sleeping together? It really depends per family. So that's why I always like to ask that. And then I also ask room view, especially for like cruises and all-inclusives. I want to know, are you okay with a tropical view because it'll be cheaper, or do you have to have oceanfront or ocean view, even if it is a little bit more expensive? So little things like that, you always want to find out, because that will play a big factor into your budget. And then you always want to ask for departure airport. Obviously, if they're flying, you need to know where they're flying out of. And if they give you one, I've had some people who will give me one and they'll say, well, we live closest to this one, but if it's cheaper to go out of here, then we'll do that too. So I always like to find out if they have, one main airport that they want to fly out of, as well as any other airports that may be close enough that they are willing to drive to if those flights are cheaper or have better times or something like that. And then I always ask if they are going to need a rental car, not so much when they're going to like Mexico and staying at an all-inclusive, but if it's like a domestic trip, or if they're going on a cruise and they're going to get there a couple days early, stay a couple days late, things like that. Do they want a rental car to get around? Just so I kind of know where that's going to fit in their budget. And then last, depending on where they are going, I always ask if they want a resort, like an all-inclusive, or if they want somewhere with a European plan. Do they want a rental property that's like a condo or a house, or are they okay with just a regular hotel like a Marriott or something like that? So these questions kind of all go for any type of vacation, and then kind of getting into each specific type of vacation. I know I'm not going to cover all of them, but the most prominent ones, I guess I would say. So for all-inclusives, I always ask, what kind of vibe are you looking for? Are you wanting to party the whole time, especially if they're younger? Like, are you wanting to go and, have foam parties at the pool every day and have nightly entertainment and a disco and a club and all of that? Are you wanting all of that on property, or are you wanting to just go sit by the pool or on the beach and do absolutely nothing the entire time you're there? Or are you wanting a little bit of both? So are you okay with just kind of hanging out by the pool during the day and then like having parties and clubs at night? Just because some resorts are better for these things than others. Like If someone wanted to just sit by the pool and relax and be, quiet and calm, I would never send them to a breathless resort, just because those are known for partying in younger crowds. I also like to ask what size property they want. So there are some people, especially older clients, who maybe don't want to have to walk super far to get to or to the pool or whatever the case may be. They want it to be a lot closer together, especially people in groups. If they don't necessarily guarantee rooms to be next to each other, they want to make sure if they have to walk to the other person's room that it's not going to be super far across the resort or anything like that. And then if they're going to an all-inclusive that's somewhere tropical, Cancun, Punta Cana, something like that, are they more beach people or are they pool people? Because there are certain places in Cancun during the summer that I would absolutely not send people, not for the beach, just because there is a seaweed season and it smells bad and you can't really get in the water. You can't really walk the beach just because it kind of takes over everything. So if they're more pool people and they don't really care about the beach, then those places may be good for them. But if their whole purpose is to go and hang out at the beach, then those places may not work for them. The other thing I always ask is if they want adults only or family friendly. Obviously, if they have kids, then it's going to have to be family friendly. But for adults, I always like to ask because a lot of times the family friendly resorts are a little bit cheaper. So I always ask, if they have a preference, and some people are very, very adamant about having absolutely no children around. And if they are, there are, again, certain properties I would not send them to because they may be connected to a family friendly resort. So when I just went to Mexico, at the beginning of the month, we stayed at a Secrets, which is adults only, but it was attached to Dreams, and a lot of the restaurants were over there, and the Dream side is family friendly. So if you have clients that are like, absolutely no children on this vacation, I want it to be all adults, I don't want to hear kids, I don't want to see kids, things like that, that's going to need to be something that you take into consideration. Another thing for people with kids, if they're staying at a family friendly resort, do they want kids or teens club? Some parents want to send their kids off to that so that they can enjoy their vacation without the kids. And some parents are like, we don't really care about that. Our kids just kind of hang out at the pool. So that is always an option. And if they do want one, you need to make sure that the resort you're sending them to has a kids or teens club. Again, I always ask for room view. So tropical view, resort view, ocean front, ocean view, and those are all different. Ocean front and ocean view are not always the same thing. So make sure you're very clear about their expectations for their room. I also like to ask if they are foodies, which personally, if I was a foodie, I probably wouldn't send someone or want to go to an all-inclusive, but there are some people that do. And there are definitely resorts that I would steer clear from if they want really, really good food and like top level food. And then same thing for entertainment options. This kind of goes back to the first thing of the vibe that they want. Do they want somewhere with a lot of entertainment, or do they plan on leaving the resort to go, downtown or to do excursions, so they don't really care about that stuff? Do they go to bed early so it doesn't matter if it has entertainment? Those are all types of things that you need to when you are quoting all inclusives. The next thing, so cruises, again, adults only or family friendly. The only adults only cruise that I know of personally is Virgin Voyages. So if they don't want kids on their cruise, then that's going to be pretty much your only option. However, I do really like Virgin Voyages, and I am super excited to start selling it and go on one, but that's neither here nor there. Another thing that I ask is obviously what type of cabin they want, again, type of view they want. So there's interior, there is ocean view, which is basically a room with a little like porthole window where they can see the ocean, but they can't actually go outside and get, fresh air from their room. There are balconies, which is exactly what it sounds like. They have a balcony, but with those, you do need to be careful because sometimes they are obstructed view balconies. So make sure you're very paying attention to a lot of details on that to make sure that if they want a balcony and they want to be able to see the ocean and not have a blocked view, that you are not getting a cabin with, the lifeboats in front of their balcony where they can't see off of it or anything like that. Another thing for a lot of people is where they are located within the ship. So for people that get seasick really easy, they usually like to be, midship instead of at the very front or the very back. It just kind of depends. And most people may not know that if they've never been on a cruise, but that's one of those things you kind of want to ask those questions and see, what are you thinking is going to happen when you're on this cruise? Do you get sick really easily or not? And kind of go from there. There are some people that want to be really close to all the restaurants and stuff. And there are some people, like I just did a cruise, and they did not want to be on the deck underneath the pool. So Those are all like little things that you may not think of, especially if you've never been on a cruise, but that are definitely important, especially to people that go on cruises a lot. They know what they like, and you better make sure that you get it for them. Another thing is dining time. So there are a couple cruise lines that do not have dining times. One of those I believe is Virgin Voyages, and I also believe Norwegian doesn't have dining times. I'm not sure about the other ones, but I know like Carnival and Royal Caribbean do have dining times. So usually there's early dining, late dining, and then my time dining. So early dining usually starts about 5:30, and then late dining I believe starts at like 8-ish or so. And then my time dining is basically you can go eat whenever you want to, but you may have to wait. So that is the only caveat to that. So just figure out what they like, especially for people that plan on getting off the ship and doing a lot of excursions. They probably don't want early dining because they're going to have to get back on the ship, shower, get ready, all that stuff. And you don't want them to feel rushed off of their excursion. You don't want them to miss their dining time and things like that. So that is really important. Departure ports is the next thing. There are so many cruise ports, all over the country. And so I always like to ask, is there one that you prefer to go to? So I know for my friends and family back home in North Carolina, we have a lot of options as far as driving. We can pretty much get anywhere within, 6 hours, except for maybe like Miami. So I actually just had someone reach out to me and she was like, we don't really care where we leave out of as long as it's, no more than 7 hours of driving. So that left a lot of options for them, like Baltimore, Norfolk, Virginia, Charleston, and then a couple places in Florida. So that kind of opens up your options, or it may take your options down. There may be some people that are flying, so it doesn't matter as long as they can get there by plane, they're good. But that is always something I ask, how far are you willing to travel to get to this port? Or which one is closest to them, because that'll obviously probably be cheaper. I also like to ask if they are going to want a hotel the day before or the day after their cruise. I know personally, I do recommend this, especially the day before, maybe not so much the day after, but just to ensure that you get there on time and you have plenty so they don't need any flights and that won't take up any of their budget. However, there are some people who are like, no, we're not going to drive and leave our car there. We'll just fly. And you have to account for that in their budget. The next thing, so before you get off the phone with your client, if you charge a fee, which I personally do, I know some other people on this call do as well. If you don't, that's totally fine. But for those of you that do, personally, I explain to my client, obviously, what the cost of that fee is. It's also on my inquiry form, but I also explain to them, this is how much it is. This is how I charge it. I charge mine through Square, and I explain to them that the reason I charge that is because I don't get paid until after they take their trip, and it helps me cover my overhead expenses until then, and it also helps me weed out clients who do not actually want to book with me. And I have not had a single person yet say, oh gosh, I can't pay that, or I'm not going to pay that, or that's a stupid reason. They're all like, I completely understand. So I always explain that to them, so it's not just like, oh, here's a random, $25 payment and things like that. And then after I explain all of that, right before I get off the call with them, I always give them a deadline of when I will have the quotes done. So personally for me, unless I have something going on that I know I'm not going to be able to get it done, my turnaround time is 3 business days, and I do not do any client calls or anything like that on Saturday, Sunday. So if somebody calls me on Thursday and I'm talking to them Thursday afternoon, I tell them I will have it back to you no later than next Tuesday. And, I always tell them it may be done sooner, but at the latest, it'll be done at this time. And obviously, if things come up and you're not able to pay an extra day or extra 2 days or whatever it is, just be open and honest with your clients so they know what to expect. And when you don't have it back to them in 2 hours, they understand why, because there are some clients who want it like right now. And that's personally what I do. Obviously, you guys can make your own deadlines and things like that. But I also have felt like having a deadline that I give to them holds me accountable to get it done within that period of time, which usually I don't have a problem with. But if I know I told them it's got to be done by next Tuesday, like I have to do it by next Tuesday. So that is always what I do before I get off the call. And then I also ask them if they have any other questions for me or any other things that they feel I need to know before doing their quotes. And a lot of times people will ask me, well, how do we pay you, or how do we pay for our trip and things like that. So I'll go over all of that with them if they have those questions. And then once I've answered all their questions and stuff like that, I get off the phone with them and I kind of start my research process and all of that. So when I'm researching properties, obviously now that I've done this for a little while, I kind of have an idea of where I'm going to send people. But before I had any idea what I was doing, I would always ask in Q&A trainings. I would ask in our Discord chat. I would ask in Facebook groups. I also Google things that they want to narrow it down. So for the people I just had that wanted a swim out suite, I literally Googled swim out suite all inclusives in Punta Cana, and it gave me a whole list of them. So I knew not to look anywhere else for a swim out suite because those were the only ones that they had. Another thing I also do whenever I'm researching, if they have like a hard budget of, X amount of dollars, whenever I go into Vax or wherever I'm looking at, I will filter out by budget. So I like slide it over so that it doesn't even show me any properties that are over that budget. Or that are, and I don't necessarily do it like if their budget's 4,000, I don't necessarily set it to 4,000. I may set it to like 4,500. And I'm going to kind of get into why I do that in a second, but that is kind of how I filter it out so that I'm not overwhelmed by so many options. And it kind of narrows it down for me because I know, hey, these are the only ones that are even going to come close to their budget. And then after I do that, once I've gotten some ideas of where I may want to send them quotes for, I will look at photos and reviews. So I always go to TripAdvisor. And then these Facebook groups that I have listed on here, I always search in those groups as well to see what other travel agents have, experienced with those, what their clients have experienced, especially for places that I haven't been. So I have started going to a lot more places recently, but before that, I had never been out of the country. So I didn't know what to expect. And a lot of times people on TripAdvisor, you don't really know what their expectations were. So they may say, oh, this was the worst resort I've ever been to, but they stayed at a super budget resort when they're used to staying at like 5-star luxury resorts, and it's just not even a comparison. So that's why I like to get advice from other travel agents and people who have sent other clients there or who have stayed there themselves that I can kind of, ask questions about and things like that. So if you can take a picture of this, because I strongly recommend, especially this resorts of the Riviera Maya, if you sell anything Cancun, Mexico, Riviera Maya, Playa del Carmen, any of that, this is a wonderful group. And every time I do a quote for Cancun, I always search in that group to find certain places that will fit what I need. So there's a lot of really great information in there if you are new and haven't been to any of these places. Whenever I am done researching, obviously I create the quotes. And if any questions kind of arise when I'm making their quotes or looking at options, I always reach back out to the client. So for example, again, my swim out suite people, they had a resort that they really liked, but none of our vendors carry them. I was going to have to book it direct, and they didn't have a deposit option. It was going to have to all be paid up front. So I asked them, is that okay? Or would you just rather me give you other options? And they said, we don't want to pay $4,000 up front. We want to be able to have a payment plan. So just give us other options. Or if there's like a situation that arises with a resort that checks pretty much all their boxes, but there's a couple things that are missing, I always like to reach out and say, well, this resort I found doesn't have this and this, but it does have all these other things. Is that okay? Or should I just not even waste my time, putting together a quote for that and kind of feel it out, see what they say. I always give my clients 99% of the time, I won't say always, 99% of the time, I give my clients 2 to 3 different options. I usually like to do one that's a little bit under budget, one that's right at their budget, and then one that's a little bit over their budget. Just because if I can get one that's maybe $200 or $300 over their budget and it has every single thing that they want, they're more likely to spend a couple $100 extra dollars. Not only are they getting a better place, but I'm also making more commissions. So that's why I do the 3 different ones. Sometimes I only do 2, but I try to do 3 if I can. I know it may be a little bit more work, but I do like to give them a couple options. They can't come back to me and say, oh, I didn't know this resort, or you didn't tell me about that. Like, I gave you the best 3 options that I could find for what you wanted. I always save the itineraries and vendors that I'm using if I can. So I know Vax is a big one for this, and you can also do it in a couple other ones, but I use Vax the most. I save them just so once I talk to them again about the quotes, if they're ready to book, I don't have to go in and select everything again. I can just do it straight from where I saved it. Everything's already there. I don't have to look through it or anything like that. Whenever I make my quote, and I recommend you guys do this too, and I know there's a whole video in the Infinity training about it, I always make sure to brand myself. So I have my logo, I have my business name, all of that stuff. Whenever I used to use Google Docs, I had it, in the header, I would have my name, my number, my website, and then over to the right-hand side, I had my logo. Now that I use TravelJoy, which next thing, if you can afford a CRM like Travelify or TravelJoy, I highly recommend it. not only does it make it easier to keep up with clients, but it also makes your quotes look a lot more professional than Google Docs. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I used that for the first 3 or 4 months that I was doing this, but it just looks a lot more professional when you use some of those. And I know a lot of us have referral codes to get you money off. So if you are interested in any of those, ask your mentor. And if they don't have them, I know I have one for Travel Joy. I know Jody has one for Travify. If your mentor doesn't have a link for you. The other thing I always like to do is price check in Expedia to see if I need to price match it, because most of the time I have found that the prices I find are better once I've included, insurance and all of that. I'm getting them more value for less money, or maybe just a tiny bit more money, but they're getting a lot more for it. But other times, on occasion, I have found that, if they were to go look at Expedia, then it's going to be, thousands of dollars cheaper. And so at that point, I'll tell them, I have found it for a cheaper price, but I need to price match it, which you cannot actually do until they have reserved their trip. So you can't do anything until you have a reservation number. So just keep that in mind. But I like to do that just to make sure I'm not like outpricing myself to where I just did all this work for them and then they're going to go book it on their own because they found it cheaper on Expedia. I personally, this is where I know a lot of agents have different opinions on this, but for me personally, I include as much information as I can on the quotes. And I know a lot of people say, well, then they're going to go book it on their own, but I charge a fee. So if they do that, then I've already gotten paid a little bit. And most of the time, people are going to ask these questions anyway. So I just go ahead and include it. So I include all flight times, when they leave, when they get there, if they have a layover, how long it is, where it's at, what airports they're leaving from. I personally always put the hotel, the resort, cruise line, whatever the name of it. And I also include a link to TripAdvisor so that they can see photos and reviews, because I know if I was using a travel agent and they just sent me something and they're like, oh, well, here's a couple pictures and here's how much it costs, I'm going to be like, well, where is it? What's the name of it? So that I can also go and look at reviews to make sure that, obviously, I know that you do your job very well, but I want to look at it for myself and make sure that it's something that's going to fit for me. If there's something that kind of raises a red flag, I can ask questions about that. So, and Jody just said she puts everything on the quote too. But like I said, that's what I would prefer if I was a client. So that's what I do for clients. It takes a lot of, back and forth out of it because you've already given them all the information. And then I also always include if there's transfers or insurance and what those kind of consist of. I also include descriptions of properties. So in VAX, if you click on a hotel name, or specifically for all inclusives, because that's pretty much all that I book, when you click on it, it'll give you a little description. I just copy and paste that. I don't go look for anything else. I just copy and paste what's already in there. And then if it doesn't have anything about the number of like restaurants and stuff like that, I try to put that in there too, just because if somebody's staying somewhere for a week and a place only has like maybe 5 restaurants, then I want them to know that. I want them to know, hey, you're going to be eating at these restaurants, more than once, or you're going to need to go out to town, or whatever the case is, just so that they know what their options are going to be. There are some people who are really picky about food and they don't want certain types of restaurants, so certain places may not be good for them. And then if there's anything that costs extra, so if it's somewhere that has like a resort fee, if it's not an all-inclusive, I know Hawaii has a lot of resort fees that you have to pay per day, but you don't pay until you get there. I always like to include that so that they understand when they get there, they are going to owe money, even though they've paid everything to me. And then again, everything that's included. So for all inclusives, if they have, water sports that are included, or coupons that you get upon check-in, I always include that just so they kind of know. And then, like I said, I always include a link to the TripAdvisor. I don't direct them directly to the website or anything like that. I like TripAdvisor because it has, some information. It shows you on a map what it's close to. It has pictures from the hotel as well as from other people that have stayed there. And then obviously it has the reviews, which is kind of the most important part, so that they can see how much other people loved it. And then the last thing I do whenever I send out my quote, I send out my Viator link for whatever area that they're staying in. So I always tell them, these are options for excursions. You don't have to book these right now, but here's what you can look at, so you can kind of get an idea of how much they're going to cost, what you may be interested in, and we can kind of go from there. And personally, I don't really book any Viator stuff super far in advance, just because I know things change, weather kind of screws things up sometimes. So personally, I don't usually book those until they're either on the trip or maybe like 2 weeks before, just kind of depending on when they're going. Obviously, if it's around a really busy time, then that's a little bit different. But for the most part, I don't book those super far out in advance, but I like to include the link so that they can have that information and kind of get an idea of what's available and how much it's going to cost and things like that. When your quote is done, I always schedule a time with my client to go over everything. So if they prefer email or text or whatever, that's how I reach back out and I just say, hey, I have your quotes finished. When would be a good time for you to get back on the phone with me so I can go over them with you? And I know some people do this differently. Personally, I like to get on the phone with them to go over the quote, even though they can read it all themselves. But that way, if they have questions, then they can just ask me there. If there's something they don't like and they want to change, I can do it right then and there, give them an updated price, things like that. And then if there's some that I think, if they just read this, they're maybe not going to love it so much. But if it's somewhere that I've personally been or somewhere that has a lot of perks and I want to really get that across to them, then I like to be on the phone because it is a lot more meaningful than just showing it in a quote and having it typed out. And personally, once I schedule that time with them, I put it in my calendar, and then I don't actually email the quotes to them until about 5 minutes before the call. Just because I want to give them enough time to kind of look it over, but I don't want to give them a whole lot of time to do all their own research and all that kind of stuff, so that I can also kind of sell it when I get on the phone with them. And again, this varies for every person, but this is what I like to do, and this is what has worked the best for me. When I'm on the call with them, I go over each quote and the perks of each place. So kind of like I just said, I really try to sell it and why I really think this resort is going to be great for them. And I go over all the perks and amenities and all of that kind of stuff. Again, I ask if they have any questions or if they want to change anything. And if so, I answer those questions, change it, give them a new price, whatever the case may be. This is also why I save my itineraries if I can, so that whenever I'm going over the quote with them, if they want to change something, I can just go in, click it, and change like the room type or a certain flight or whatever. I don't have to do the whole thing all over again. And then once the call is over, I like to ask them if there's any that they really like or if there's one that sticks out more than any others that I sent. And I ask if they want to book. And a lot of times people will tell me that they want to speak to their husband or whoever. I know some people like to get everybody that's going on the trip on the call at once, but I know for me personally, that would never happen. Me and my husband have very different schedules, so I don't stress that too much. And usually by this point, if they've gotten on the phone with me, they've paid my fee and all that stuff, they're most likely going to book with me anyway. So I'm okay with them going and talking to their spouse or whoever they're going on the trip with or whatever. And then just getting back to me. And then obviously if I don't hear back within, a day or two, I'll reach back out and say, hey, just wanted to follow up and see if you guys are ready to book, and kind of go from there. And if I need to get back on the phone with them, then I can. But that's pretty much what I do up until they're ready to book. So once they are ready to book, I figure out obviously which option they want. And then I will tell them this is how much the deposit is. So I will send them the credit card authorization form. And I use TravelJoy, so I send them that first because they just fill out their card information and then I can see it to input it, and then I don't have to get it over the phone and then send them the form, or they have to fill it out again and all that stuff. I send it first. That way I have all of the information right there. And then I also say, once you have sent this into me, the credit card authorization form, please send me a copy of every person who is going. Send me a copy of their ID or their passport. Usually if they are going out of the country, I ask for the passport and not their ID. If it's super far out and they don't have it yet, then an ID will suffice, but I prefer a passport just to make sure that it's still in date, to make sure that, like for me personally, my passport still has my maiden name on it, so that's how I have to travel. If I send them a picture of my ID and they enter my married name, then I'm going to get to the airport and be really out of luck because they're not going to let me on the plane with my name's not matching. So I also like to do that to make sure that they are all valid and that they're going to be valid until at least usually 6 months after the trip is over. If they are going out of the country, it really just depends on where they're going, but good rule of thumb is 6 months out. And then I also kind of do that to hold myself accountable, to make sure that I spell everybody's name right, I have everybody's birthday correct and all that good stuff. And then if something happens, it's not on the client, it's on me. So that way, if something goes wrong, they aren't responsible for it, it's me, and it makes you kind of be more attentive to detail. So you don't send those in or anything unless it's a 21-day booking for certain vendors, but I keep them all in my records. Again, this is why I use TravelJoy, just because I can keep everything in there, and I believe Travelify is the same way. So it just makes it easier for me to keep all of that. I don't have like a bunch of documents on my computer, and then if my computer crashes, I don't have to worry about losing it all and things like that. So it's just kind of like a safety measure for me, but you definitely need to keep them in your records regardless of what you use to send out quotes, just in case something goes wrong and they try to dispute a charge that they very much did authorize and things like that. After the booking dates, I know Virgin Voyages you do. Otherwise, they're not going to get any of the information that they need. But for anything else, I always put in my email and my phone number so that if a flight changes, especially for a trip that's super far out, flights change all the time. And I don't want my clients to be getting all these emails of, oh, your flight changed. Oh, your flight changed again. And we're still 6 months out, and have them freaking out. Like, I'll just send them, super close to time. Hey, this is what your flight's actually, it did change, and things like that. So they don't get a bunch of information that they don't need. Whenever I receive the confirmation email that the deposit has been paid and the booking is, obviously confirmed, I forward it to my client, but I take out all of the vendor links and branding and all that. So if it says like FunJet or anything like that, then I delete all of that out so that they don't see who I booked it through or any of that information. The only links that I leave in pretty much are for the airline so that they can see like baggage policies and all that good stuff. So if they have questions, then they can just go look at that, but it won't take them to anywhere that they don't have access to, because it may be like a travel agent site or something like that. And then any unnecessary info. And what I mean by that is, like, a lot of times the hotel advisories that show up whenever you book something in Vax is just a bunch of like stuff that doesn't make sense to clients. So I try to keep it to the bare minimum with like their flights, their flight times, their hotel, any amenities that come with it, and then their payment schedule. That's pretty much all I leave in. And then transfers and insurance, obviously. But other than that, I try to take out every single other thing because they don't need to see all that. It's just a lot of info that they don't need. And then once I've made the booking, I send them an email to leave a review. And I know a lot of people don't like to do this before they go on their trip, but personally I do, because I am still kind of new, and the more reviews you can have, the better. So whenever people have booked with me, but they have not yet gone on their trip, I ask them to leave links to them. And basically what I asked for them to put in their review is how well my communication was, how smooth the booking process was, did I meet their needs and all that kind of stuff, how easy I was, or how well I was at answering questions, anything like that that they find to be helpful. And I have actually gotten a couple reviews about that. Like, I had one guy, he said, I had a lot of questions and she answered all of them. I will do all of my booking with her in the future. So that is really helpful when other people come to your page and want to see that you're a real person and you're a real business, and they want to see what other people's experience with you was before they reach out to you. So I send one before the trip and after the trip, which I'll get to in a minute. I also set reminders in my calendar. So I personally use Google Calendar. That is like my lifesaver. I put in 1 month before their final payment is due that, hey, this final payment's due in 1 month. And I reach out to the client at that time and say, hey, your final payment's due in a month. Just wanted to let you know, like, please let me know when you're ready to make a payment. If they still have not paid their final payment 2 weeks out, I will set another reminder for that, reach out to them again, say, hey, your final payment's due in 2 weeks. Just so you know, like, you still have 2 weeks, but don't forget that this amount of money is due. And then last, I put final payment date, but I meant the day before the final payment, because if they still have not said that they want to pay you or whatever, I reach back out to them and say, hey, if you don't pay this final payment, your trip will be canceled and you will not get your money back, unless obviously they have the insurance. So I always, make sure that I have given them plenty of reminders so that it can't come back on me saying, oh, well, you didn't tell me that my payment was due, because I told you 3 times now. I also put in my calendar their travel dates so that I know when they're traveling, just so I can, reach out to them and things like that, which I'll get into in a second. And then the last thing I set a reminder for is 2 weeks before their trip, I'll set a reminder to email their resort for some sort of amenity. If it's somebody's honeymoon or a birthday or something like that, anniversary, I'll put that in my reminder to be like, hey, this is somebody's birthday, ask if they can send a birthday amenity instead of just like something random, or send something that says happy birthday or something like that. After I do all of that, obviously I submit my commission tracking form. So that is on your travel agent website, your Evo travel agent site. I submit that because obviously I want to get paid. So I make sure I do it right then and there. And then I submit raffles. So I know Jody pretty much always does a raffle. If there's any other raffles that your mentor does, Infinity does one. And I think Tommy Joe is still doing one. Those are all on the Infinity site. And they're all listed in the Discord as well, because I like free money. So I fill out those every time I make a booking. And then the last thing I do is I make a social media post about the booking. So even if I don't post it right away, because I'm super weird about my social media, but I will schedule it to post whenever. And basically what I'll do is I'll post a picture either of the resort I just booked, of the cruise line I just booked, whatever it is. If they're going for a baseball game or something like that, I'll do of the baseball field, something related to what I booked, and I'll make a post about it saying such and such just booked this this trip with us. Thank you so much for trusting us with your vacation. And then sometimes I'll put, if you're interested in a quote for this, then send me, like, fill out my inquiry form or whatever. But I always make a post about it. Again, this kind of goes back to show people you are a real person, you are booking things. And then sometimes it sparks interest in people and they want to book the same thing and you've already done all the work. So I always do that. And then another thing that I didn't put on here, but for me personally, I track all of my expenses that are, I guess, earnings. So I go in and put that in my spreadsheet too. I know not everybody does that, but that is another thing that I do is put in my bookings of how much I booked, and then also how much that I should get paid and what date that I should expect that payment to come in. So that way, if I don't get paid something, I can always go back and see, has it been long enough? Should I have gotten paid for this? And things like that. So then last thing is pre-travel. So this is before they go on their trip. Kind of like I already mentioned, 1 month and 2 weeks before the final due date, I always remind them that their payment is due. 24 hours before their flight, I try to check my clients in. Sometimes they do this on their own, so I don't get a chance to, but if I can check them in for their flight, I always like to do that just as that extra little added service. I always, the day before, I wish them safe travels and I ask them if they need anything else, or ask if they're ready to book excursions or if they want to wait until they get there, things like that. Just again, to continue having that relationship with people, let them know that you didn't just book this vacation for them and then you don't give a crap about the rest of their vacation as long as you got your money. So again, it's just one of those, relationship things, making people feel like you actually do care about them and are interested in what they're doing, things like that. Usually the second or third day of their trip, I'll ask them, hey, just wanted to make sure you made it safely. Whenever you have time, I'd love to hear your first impressions of the resort, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. I always like to hear that, especially if I'm in the process of doing other quotes and I have clients at a resort that I'm thinking about quoting. I want to see what they think, because if they hate it, then I'm probably not going to quote it again. Or if they really love it, then I may add it to my list of places to give to my new client. So I always like to do that. And then again, if they're ready to book excursions or anything, if they want me to do that instead of doing it on their own, then I can do that at that point, things like that. And then last, the day after they come back, I like to reach out again, make sure that they made it home safely, ask how their trip was, ask if there's anything that stood out to them, good or bad. I like to, text them, call them, whatever it is. Usually I just text my clients for those things, just to kind of get their feedback. And then I also send them, again, a link to leave a review. And I also have a traveler feedback form. So I know Jody has one of these as well. If you guys are interested in those, then just reach out to one of us. I'd be happy to share mine with you, because I got mine mainly from what Jody has on hers. But I send them that. One, I like them to leave a review because I want them to leave a review about how the resort was, how it fit their needs, all of that stuff, because they've most likely already left a review about my booking process and how I communicate and all of that. So I want them to leave a review about how helpful I was during their travel, especially if they had something go wrong. Like I had someone whose flight got canceled and I got it fixed really quick for them, and they didn't have to, have another layover overnight, which was totally different than when she left a review before she went on the trip. So anything like that happened, I want them to put in their review. And then the traveler feedback form is more related to where they stayed and their experience with the resort. Would they go back there? Would they recommend it to other people? I also ask them for photos that I can share on social media, get their permission for that, all that kind of stuff, just so that, again, if I want to quote it for someone else, if I know that I had all these people that didn't like that place or all these people that really loved that place, that will kind of help me for future clients. So that is pretty much my process. Again, also, I thank them for their business. If they had a good time, I say, I'm so glad you had so much fun. Thank you for trusting me with your vacation. If you have any travel needs in the future, please keep me in mind. If you have any friends that are traveling, please, mention my name, things like that. Just so I can continue to serve those same people, really build a relationship with them, and then have them come back to me for every trip they go on after that. So that's pretty much what I do, start to finish. Again, like I said, you can always tweak this to kind of make it your own and do what you like and things like that. But that's pretty much what I do. That's what I have found to work best for me. Do you guys have any questions or anything you want to add or anything you need clarification on, anything like that? If not, then let me stop this recording.
Hi, my name is